What's going on, dudes and dudettes? So, yes, Duke did get their first commitment for the 2022 season for John Shire, the new in waiting head coach. He's a center. I forget where he's from, but he is a 4-star center, and his name is, I believe it's Kyle Filipowski. And if he's a 4-star, means he's talented. Could maybe rise up to a 5-star, but apparently he is a top 100 player. So I don't expect him to contribute right away, but pretty sure he will be able to help the Duke Blue Devils once he gets onto campus. Then, yes, the Chargers, I know a lot of times I was reporting that they weren't really vaccinated or anything like that, one of the few teams that weren't, but now they are pretty much officially around 90% fully vaccinated players. I guess either they like the health benefits, or they're saying that it might be like how I always thought, it's a kind of like a advantage. Most of your players are vaccinated, so they won't have to miss time and won't have to stay out 10 days as they usually do if they aren't vaccinated, if they do get COVID during the season, so it helps out. So we'll see how that goes. Should be very interesting. Then USC's one of their assistant coaches in basketball, Jason Hart, ex-basketball player as well. I know he was getting a couple of college spots like to interview and even some NBA teams, but he is actually finalizing a deal to become the G League Ignite head coach, which just had about like 3 or 4 guys from that NBA G League team drafted in last night's draft. So probably a good way to start off your head coaching career. To start there, you get a lot of young talented players. You're always going to be on TV, even if it is ESPN2, but you're still on TV. And yeah, so good luck to him. I know he's one of the better assistant coaches out there, so we'll see what he can do. Then, yes, the trade heard all over the NBA yesterday. So right before the the draft started, Lakers were actually trying to finalize 2 deals, but the one with Sacramento and Buddy Hield did not go through, so they ended up going with a trade with Washington, which they traded with a couple years ago. So kind of not surprised the deal got done, but I am sort of surprised about the player. When I first heard the news that Russell Westbrook was traded to LA, I was like, yeah, it gets your attention, but just the fact that they kept saying the type of players they want on the team were shooters, and obviously they want a playmaking point guard, which is what he is, but he does get left open a lot from 3-point distance. But I don't know, and the more and more I think about it, I actually get excited about the idea of playing. And yeah, if he's the only one guy on the court that can't shoot a shot or hit a shot from 3-point, then that's fine. But just imagining him in the pick and roll with either LeBron or AD or vice versa, because they could all do and play off each other, it's going to be pretty fantastic. Hopefully they can all stay healthy. I know he's been like an Iron Man and, a Terminator, not getting injured and stuff lately, but, hopefully none of that bad luck travels to LA. But overall, it's kind of grown on me that it is a good trade. And of course it was for Kyle Kuzma, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Montrezl Harrell. That was like one of the bigger things to make prices match up. He actually agreed to his contract. He didn't have to, but he did because he wanted to change the scenery. And apparently he was okay with going to Washington unless they might be trading him as well. Maybe that's why he opted in, just to be able to get out either way. But they also sent their only draft pick last night, number 22 overall in the first round, to Washington. And the Lakers did get back draft picks. I hate that it wasn't in last night's draft, so it could help them right away and have, younger guys under contract that is cheap. But they did get 2 future second round picks. I believe it's 2024 and 2028, something like that. So of course we won't be able to see that for a while, but I don't know. I know the one guy left off is pretty much Dennis Schroeder, which everyone thought was going to be the first guy to get traded because he had more value. I know a lot of teams are still interested in him. It just, hopefully those teams that have cap space, like Toronto, I think, and New York and Chicago, if they go after guys that aren't point guards and use up their money, it would be easier to do a sign and trade where the Lakers get something in return, which is a player, hopefully. But if they don't, and he could just sign and leave with whoever, it's gonna end up hurting the Lakers, which sucks. But it's what they're playing with right now, and hopefully it goes in their favor. But other bit of draft news last night, yes, USC's Evan Mobley was drafted number 3 overall to the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's a alright situation. They have a handful of talented players out there. I just don't know if they have the most talented coaching staff ever there, especially once LeBron left. So I don't know. If they get the coaching right, I think he'll end up being fine out there. Then the ex-Duke player Jalen Johnson, he was the only Duke guy drafted. I'll get into that later, but he was drafted by the Atlanta Hawks later in the first round. So once again, the Hawks take another Duke player. They took Cam Reddish a couple years ago, and he did pretty good for them in the playoffs this year. And I guess they're trying to strike gold again on a guy who was considered, even when he was coming out of high school, like a top 5 talent in this draft. But for certain reasons, especially why he left Duke early, people are still unsure about that. So I guess it's the reason why he dropped. But talent-wise, he's there. So we'll see what he can do, and definitely excited for that opportunity for him. Then, yes, the Lakers added 4 more players to a couple of different random contracts. One of the guys that I was, of course, very surprised and happy that they got, and I've been a fan of him for a while, ever since seeing him in his high school senior mixtape. It was just freaking crazy. His senior year in high school, he's like the most athletic white guy, dunking on everybody, step back threes. He was doing so much crazy stuff, and of course wanted him to go to Duke, but ended up choosing Georgetown, left there to go to Texas Tech. Decided to leave, but didn't get drafted, which is pretty crazy to me because I think he's really talented. But he was one of the first guys the Lakers signed last night after the draft, and I believe it was to a camp deal or something like that. So he's invited for them to join the whole entire camp before the season, and I'm pretty sure with his talent and the fact that the Lakers are desperate, if they don't get enough players overall, they will end up signing him to a cheap deal, which is what I'll be happy about, which is pretty cool. And they got a couple of pretty good, 2 talented players. They have the NBA teams are allowed 2 two-way contracts, which means they play both in the G League and in the NBA during the year. There's only like a certain number of games, but 2 guys they had on there, Kostas Antetokounmpo and Devontae Cacok, they decided not to sign both of them, and one of them already left, signed somewhere else, so they ended up giving those contracts to 2 younger guys, and these guys were pretty talented. Joel Ayayi, I believe that's how you say his name. He was part of the team that was pretty much number 1 throughout the whole entire year in Gonzaga. He was one of the better glue players, I think, because he's definitely a 3-and-D type of guy, because he could slash to the basket, plays great defense, and can hit the 3-point shot as well. Always thought he was, like I said, the glue guy and one of the better players on that team, which is why they were successful. So I'm surprised he wasn't drafted as well, but definitely glad he is with the Lakers right now for at least a couple years. And then Austin Reeves is a pretty talented white dude from Oklahoma who pretty much can handle the ball. He's kind of like in that white dude frame of TJ McConnell and stuff like that. A guy who can, run an offense and still attack the basket, make scores like that, or make shots from 3-point as well if he's open. So definitely glad about that they got a playmaker. He's almost like a little bit less athletic version of Alex Caruso, who may or may not return. So not bad if you could replace him with a guy like that. So definitely happy about that. And then, of course, they had to get a Michigan guy because the Lakers general manager is an ex-Michigan player, and they got a guy last year. He didn't make the team, but this guy, I think this guy is going to be on a 10-day exhibit or exhibition type of contract where I guess he's going to be on for 10 days, but I think they're going to keep him on for the summer league and all that stuff. So he has a chance to make the team. He's definitely one of the better players I've seen highlights-wise coming out of Michigan. Definitely a guy who can do all the dirty work and stuff, and he'll come cheap too if you get him on another longer-term contract after this one. So not bad. Definitely a good pickup in my opinion, finally. So yeah, those were the moves that the Lakers made. And then ex-Duke player Mason Plumlee, he did get traded last night from Detroit to the Charlotte Hornets. So he kind of went back to home to North Carolina where Duke is, but I don't know, maybe he'll stay there, maybe not. I think he just have a 1-year deal, but we'll see. Definitely hoping he might be available at some point. And then there was reports that DeMar DeRozan, ex-USC and San Antonio Spurs guy, who will become a free agent in a couple days actually, was actually speaking to LeBron James before the sign and trade of Russell Westbrook. Maybe they were going to do a deal with San Antonio to do a sign and trade with him. It's too bad that the Lakers did a sign and trade and took like $10 extra million with Westbrook, because now it's going to be hard to do another sign and trade for a guy like a DeRozan or anybody else. So, I mean, I've heard DeRozan would be willing to take a smaller contract because the Lakers have like another $5-point-something million veteran deal they can do, and a couple other minimum veteran contracts, which is like around $2 million. They could do a couple of those, and other cheap ways you can fill out a roster. But as long as those guys want to play for a championship and sign those small contracts, and you can fill out a team. It's just depending who they want to spend that little extra money they have on. But like I said, it kind of also depends what they do with Dennis Schroeder. Hopefully they can get something in return, but if they do a sign and trade with him to another team, they can't take on a player that is more expensive or is also in a sign and trade to them as well. So be very interesting. But yes, hopefully they can get something in return, like I said. And you know, I think it's time for, also with those cheaper veteran deals, it's time for Carmelo to finally come and play with LeBron. I know past couple years Lakers fans did want him, but now that we know he's more of a role player and not trying to shoot his shot all the time, I think he could be a good fit with them, especially on a cheap deal. And then both DJ Stewart and Matthew Hurt, as I mentioned earlier, other ex-Duke players that were not drafted, I kind of thought they both should have returned back to school once they figured out after the combine that they probably weren't going to get drafted, but they didn't. But luckily, the shooting guard DJ Stewart has signed a contract with the Sacramento Kings, so congrats to him. But I haven't heard any news on Matthew Hurt, so hopefully he does get an opportunity, but you just never know. But that's the life of the NBA, I guess. And then, yes, it was back-to-back years where USC has had a top lottery pick. Obviously, last year was Onyeka Okongwu to Atlanta, and now this year was Evan Mobley to Cleveland. I think there are like only 3 other teams that were able to do that back-to-back. Even like Duke and Kentucky haven't been as consistent with that as well. So pretty cool. Definitely glad that was able to happen. They're both on the East Coast. Gotta get them back to the West and the Lakers at some point, but we'll see. And then to end off with some miscellaneous news, yes, of course, not only was the draft yesterday, but I was also surprised by Angels and Airwaves' new music video with a new song called Losing My Mind. It's pretty cool. A lot of cool messages in there, and definitely different sounding than a lot of Angels and Airwaves music that I've heard. But music video is pretty weird. It's kind of hard to focus on the song if you watch the music video because it's too wacky, but just hearing the song by itself, it's pretty awesome. So if you want to give that a listen, Losing My Mind by Angels and Airwaves, go ahead. And then also yesterday, New Found Glory released a new song coming off their new semi new record coming out. It was a bonus track called, I believe it's Backseat, and it's pretty cool. It's definitely one of the faster songs I've ever heard them playing on there, like ever. So it was definitely a pretty cool song. Nice catchy riff and chorus as well. So definitely a very good song to add to the New Found Glory catalog, in my opinion. So happy about that. So yes, thanks for watching, people. Like and subscribe. Comment down below. Let me know what y'all think. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.